Hello, I'm Janine Kakmar with PHTV4, and today on Around Palos, we're going to take a look on updates on what's going on at Lake Katherine Nature Center and Botanic Gardens and Palos Heights. And today with us we have Gareth Blakesley, the Director and Chief Naturalist at Lake Katherine. So thank you for visiting us this morning, Gareth.
You're welcome.
You just did a presentation at City Hall last week about some big events coming up this year, coming up in the future for Lake Katherine. So, and in that presentation, you talked a little bit about the history of Lake Katherine. So, wanted to give us a little overview about Lake Katherine's background for those of you who aren't familiar with Lake Katherine, our community, and on some of the things that will be coming up.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we were talking about, myself and the board members and the staff, is that we really needed to kind of like remind the community of what Lake Katherine is, what its history has been, and where we are, and then what we want to do in the future. Because we feel like we haven't done that for a while, especially because of the pandemic, everything sort of shut things down. But we felt like it gave us a good opportunity to come back and say, this is the history of Lake Katherine, this is where we are right now, and this is what we hope to do for the future. So we're kind of, that's why we wanted to do that presentation.
Oh, okay. So what are some of the projects that you have coming up?
Well, some of the projects that we have coming up, one of the main things we have is we have the Maestras Boathouse and Boardwalk. We have been fundraising for that this year and last year, and we have basically been developing this, we've been fundraising, we're about $75,000 of fundraising now into what we think is going to be a $100,000 project. And what we hope to do is where we do our canoe and kayak rentals now, which actually was funded by the Beautification Committee initially anyway, which has been a great revenue generator for Lake Katherine over the years, pretty much bringing in close to 25 to 30,000 every year because of that project, which is really good. But the area itself is a bit grotty. It's not a very useful area. So we basically came up with an idea. We had some seed money from an anonymous donor that contributed about $30,000, and we wanted to do something that we could with that money. And we thought, what's one of the things that we can do? So pan back to 2012, we developed a master site plan at that time. And part of the master site plan was able to kind of say, okay, these are different ways of utilizing the area. And where we do the canoes and kayaks now was where we actually wanted to put in, on the master site plan, had a small boathouse and a pontoon dock going out into the water right there. We used to have a floating dock in that area, but we took it out because it was basically, it's probably not ADA accessible, it was probably unsafe. So we had something that was analogous to the structures that we want to create in that area anyway. And the thing about that is we want to be able to get people out into the water. We want to be able to have people, anyone can be able to get in a canoe and kayak, or when you're out on a boardwalk or a pontoon, you're actually in the water. Not everyone can do that. But it also gives us a chance to beautify that area with native plants, pollinators, and then having a usable structure. Right now we basically just have a little box where we put our life jackets, and we want to change that out and actually have something where we can put more of our structures in there. Like a little boathouse where we can put some of our aquatic recreational gear. And that'd be really, really useful and make the area look a lot nicer as well.
Yeah, it's just when I'm listening to you talk about the new things that are going on, I just remember, the history of how Lake Katherine all started. It was the former gun club in town, and then, we dredged out that area. So there have been some massive changes there, and you continue to work to just better the what you have there already.
It's weird because the area, we almost think of it as like a pre-2005 and then like a post-2005. And that's basically, 2005 was when the Memorandum of Understanding was created between the City of Palos Heights and Lake Katherine Nature Center and Botanic Gardens. That's basically when the non-profit was created. And so that's kind of the way we view it. But pre-2005, it's kind of worthwhile going into a little bit of the history of what happened there. And I won't go too far back. I can go back as far as glacial periods, but we'll go as far back as when the Cal Sag was created. So 1911, 1922, the Cal Sag was created. All that material was kind of dumped on the side, and that basically was where Lake Katherine was going to be. And then for the longest period of time, the Palos Heights Gun Club was established in 1938 in that area because it was essentially an area that was disturbed and wasn't very well used. And so it was kind of like a forgotten land. There's even anecdotal evidence of people doing some trapping in that area back there. There's some notes from a period of time, which is pretty interesting. So it really was a forgotten unofficial spoil site, and then obviously you had the gun club that was in a different proximity to what it is now. Then in 1985, the mayor at the time, Eugene Simpson, came up with this idea that he apparently wrote this down on a napkin in a bar, a pub, I don't know, I wasn't there.
Coffee shop, whatever.
Coffee shop, sure. Where he basically came up with plans for the nature center, and he wanted something to be representative of the North Woods at that time, and so he was able to kind of say, okay, we want to do this, we want to sign a lease.
Because he's talking about a piece of land that was being used as a junkyard at that time.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, there was a piece of, that area where Lake Catherine presently is, was a dump site. I know many people talk about that. It was unused, but so to have a vision of changing that into a nature center and a botanic garden, with projects that you're working on now, we're putting in a new boathouse. I mean, we had so many visitors with Lake Catherine just to walk the trails and the classes that you give at the school, you know, not the school, but at the in your auditorium there and on site. So to see the beginnings from that, and then to have it something drawn on a napkin to completely re-visualize the land use. And I don't know if he actually really envisioned the benefit it gives to the whole community, though, to have something like a nature and botanic gardens in the community. So
I think sometimes you have people back in the day who have that vision of what you could create something, and you may not know what the outcomes are going to be, but you know it's going to be good. And I'm sure he at the time knew it was going to be something good. And it's nice because his wife at the time, Diana Rosage, is still on our board right now. So it's nice to have that continuity with that connection with the mayor of Simpson.
So you're having, what other projects coming up now?
So what we have coming up, so one of the things we hope to do is, obviously we talked about the Restaurants, Boathouse and Walk, but because we've basically been working, or I should say the city and Public Works Department has been working hard on doing a parking lot expansion.
Right. It does get crowded there.
It does, and we don't have enough spaces, and you could argue why is a nature center trying to do more parking, but honestly we need it to be more practical for the usage we have. We have approximately 138,000 plus visitors through Lake Catherine every year.
Oh my
that's
gosh.
a conservative estimate and based off data. We obviously are not representing the people. Obviously we had the Calsac bike trail that came through, and then our visitation numbers came up on top of the visitors that come specifically for Lake Catherine itself. It's a necessity.
And then so you have a lot of parties. You do a lot of rental sites.
Absolutely.
Correct?
We do events basically from our peak time is from April through to October. And virtually every weekend we'll have both our clubhouse, our festival grounds, and our auditorium will be booked. Plus we'll have wedding photos as well. It's a big revenue driver for us. About $160,000 of our revenue comes from rentals. So it's a big part of the money that comes through to Lake Catherine. It's important. But that being said, so the parking lot is essential, and it's going to be, it's going to have permeable pavers, it's going to have bioswales on each side, and it's pretty much going to go straight back from where it is right now. So it's going to be adjacent to Tiffany Square, but that area is actually full of invasive species right now. It's mostly buckthorn and brush, and so it's not really going to impact the prairie. It's going to be to the side of the prairie. So we wanted to keep the prairie. That's a good use for us. And it's going to have a little turnaround at the far end. So the idea is, for what I've been told, it had to go through a lot of different things, had to go through IDOT permissions and all that kind of stuff, and MWRD, and you know, these are things that have to happen. But we're hoping, fingers crossed, that it'll start shovels in the ground 2024.
Okay.
So dates obviously can change, things can crop up, so that's what we hope will be the case. What's nice about that, as soon as that's completed, what we actually already have some seed money to redo the festival grounds. And the festival grounds is basically the green lawn area next to the parking area. And what we want to do initially is, there's a depression there. We want to remove the depression, because what happens is we have problems with pooling there and water issues there. And that's not very beneficial for when people come in and have an outside event. That might be a tent or something of that nature. We then want to put ADA walkways through that as well.
Oh, okay.
So that basically means that anyone can get access around that part of the facility, but we also want to be able to put some more native plantings in that area so it naturalize a little bit. So it would be pretty much the project would be leveling the area, making it more usable for spaces, still keeping the green space in the middle, ADA walkways, and then also plantings in that area as well. So that's kind of one of the big things that we have coming up.
What's the timeline on that one?
We're going to see how the parking lot goes first, because we really don't want to kind of like do something before the other. So we want to get the parking done, and then we'll work onto this, which seems to make the most sense.
So that's on the coming down the pipe.
But we do have seed money for that, so that's something that we can get going with that pretty quickly.
Okay. All right, great. Other things, other classes, or how will you say these projects will impact the Lake Katherine and in the community?
Well, I think they'll have a beneficial outcomes, because Lake Katherine is basically a regional destination, and we may not be as well revered as, say, the Botanic Garden or the Morton Arboretum, but people come here from the immediate region. So we have a lot of people from Palos Heights come here. They're the people like the regulars, but we also have people come from other sites, and we want to still maintain ourselves as a destination for people to come to Lake Katherine. Not only so they can enjoy Lake Katherine, which we hope they enjoy, especially with these other upgrades will actually make it far more beneficial for their experience, but also it means that they will be coming and probably spending their money in Palos Heights as well. So it's kind of a net benefit to the city of Palos Heights, a economic driver, all that kind of good stuff. So and not only that, a lot of people, if they're more likely to come to Lake Katherine because we have better facilities for them, they're more likely to, when they rent our facilities, they use local catering companies, they use local companies to help them with those events. So it's kind of one of those things that improves the experience for people when they come here. All of this, so like whether it's a nature experience or whether you're having a rental experience, but then it also has an economic benefit to the community at large as well, and so we think that's a huge thing as well.
It is a huge benefit. And then of course you have all the classes and things you guys do every month, which of course you can find that on their website at Lake Katherine. Any big special events coming up shortly or in the near future?
So
the spring, say.
So our big events per se, we've been working a lot with the Green Team, and you might have heard from an earlier show that we're going to be working on doing a city cleanup day, which is on April 29th. We're working on a couple of things. We're working on is doing a bio blitz also coming up in April, which is exciting. So that's a Lake Katherine driven thing.
What's a bio blitz?
It's basically a rapid biodiversity assessment of our site.
What does that mean?
It means hopefully we can figure out how many animals and creatures and birds and creatures live on the site.
Awesome.
We want people to volunteer for that. There'll be a volunteer type event.
Oh, okay.
So that's exciting coming up as well. And but honestly, we do so many great environmental programs for homeschoolers. We do it for teens and younger. So these are all on our website that you can check out. Usually we post these things just a month out and they start to fill up like that.
And you have programs for adults as well. I've seen those,
we just actually did a macrame class just the other night, which was actually really fun. And the next class we have coming up, we're actually going to be doing making birdhouses in the evening.
Cool.
So we're doing birdhouses and we'll have some brews there as well because it's a nice alliteration. But so these are just the things we have. Every month we have something going. We usually have an evening class, and then virtually every day we have some education classes going on for either school groups, homeschool groups, or people that are not in school yet. And that's just our standard stuff that we have going on. And then starting in May all the way through to October, our canoe and kayak season starts back up again. We start doing fishing days once a month. We do a canoe and kayak tour once a month. We'll do a solstice walk as well. And these are just some of the things that we have going on throughout the year. Pretty much every month has something to go on. So if you miss something, you pretty much can get something that's similar to it in a follow-up time. So it's very exciting.
So website has the stuff?
Yes, and our social media platforms as well.
Right, okay, great. Anything else you want to, do we need to know about Lake Katherine coming up?
So obviously I gave that presentation the other night, and that gave a nice little snapshot of the history. It also gave a little snapshot of our present coming out of 2022. 2022 was a very good year for us. We were able to bring in $85,000 of donations. Kind of reassesses the importance of being a non-profit. So we are a city entity. I should clarify, the land is actually owned by Water Reclamation District of Chicago. It's leased to the city of Palos Heights. And then there's a memorandum of understanding between the city of Palos Heights and the non-profit. nonprofit. The nonprofit last year really came into its own by being able to bring in $85,000 worth of donations.
Wow.
And that's something we want to continue on. And that's where the nonprofit board has really been kind of standing up and trying to bring in more funding, using their ties to help with funding events and programs and projects and things of that nature.
Okay, great. Well, Gareth, thank you so much for being with us today and providing us the information that we wanted to know about Lake Katherine. And so thanks again for all the information. And I'm sure to go to visit their Lake Katherine's website and their social media sites, and they have more all the details from what you were talking about here. So thanks again, Gareth, and thank you all for watching Around Palos. I'm Janine Kakmar with PHTV Channel 4.